Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Kim's Corner. I'm back in the Cable Vision studios. I was on leased access for so long, so the studio was a no-no. So I'm back, and today I have with me Miss Stephanie Smith, MSW, and you're the president of the Vesta Project. Yeah. And I also have with me Danene Lucas. We had a joke about how I can remember her last name. Danene Lucas, and you're a sexual assault mentor.
Yes.
So, Stephanie, start out. Tell us a little bit about your program and what you do.
Oh, well, I am an MSW, as you said, and I have a program called the Vesta Project. And what I do is I help women start groups with women who are survivors of sexual assault. I do seminars, I do professional counseling, and I do a lot of planning for women who are trying to put together any kind of retreats or services for women and children and family who are survivors of sexual assault.
Okay, that's what I wanted. Now, do you work separately with children, or you work with the woman? And
I work also with the women now,
okay.
But a lot of these women have children as well. So if they have children, I kind of give them the reference to where they need to take their children for therapy and so forth, if they are a survivor of sexual assault. But more so now, I'm here to define the problem of sexual assault, okay. I mean that it is a problem. That's how we should define
and
it.
There's been a lot of sexual harassment going on now in Hollywood and everywhere.
Yes. And even though that's going on and that's so important, I don't want us to forget about the women and the children who have a history of sexual violence as well. So in this country, we know every 10 minutes, a woman is being sexually assaulted, right, in this country. We know 82% of those that are sexually assaulted in this country do not report it. We know that the highest number of women and children that are sexually assaulted are between the ages of 12 and 24.
Wow.
So we're really talking grammar school.
Yes,
right? And we also know that around the world, 1 in 3 women around the world are either sexually assaulted or experience some kind of domestic violence. So I just think that, this conversation, it needs to be defined as a problem, and regardless of how much we're seeing a lot of individuals being held accountable for their actions in the workforce area, I just don't want us to forget the survivors who have never told their stories. And again, 82% of women who have been sexually assaulted do not tell their stories.
Exactly. Now, the children, is it usually a family member? Or?
Yeah, the majority of the cases is done either by a family member, by someone you know, or someone you trust, a professional friend. It's very rare that someone is sexually assaulted by a stranger. So I often tell people, don't think that it's going to be someone jumping out of the bushes, or some stranger that you don't know. It's going to be someone who trusts you, that you trust. I mean, so they have access to you. And sometimes women or individual society think that it has something to do with the way a person is dressed, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the way a person is dressed. It's more so who's more vulnerable at that time.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Tell us your story. How did you become a sexual assault mentor?
Well, I am a sexual assault survivor. I was raped by a family member from the time I was 13 to the time I was 16. And then I was raped at 17 by a young man I was breaking up with. So my journey to healing, I would say, took me maybe 10 years. And it became my passion because I didn't have a voice. So when I found my voice, I took it upon myself to say, if I could help just one woman with her journey, to get her voice back, to empower her, to let her know that her past and experience, one, it was never her fault, that guilt and shame does not belong on you, it belongs on the perpetrator. So what I do is I help women journey on to healing, to get back their voice, to be empowered, to be the person that God has ordained them to be from the very beginning before this experience.
Now that's interesting. You said, how old were you when you first were sexually
13.
assaulted? And it was a family member.
I'm a family member, a cousin.
So you didn't tell anybody?
I didn't tell anyone until I was 16. So every summer, what happened was every summer he would come to our home where my grandmother lived. And the first time I was raped, it was by knife point. And he told me if I told anyone that he would kill my parents. And so right there, that voice was stolen. So I was silent for years, was suicidal during that time. And I often...
So he didn't live with you?
No.
But it was only when he came to visit? And how long were those visits?
the entire summer. So when kids were like, "Oh, summer is coming, school is coming," I knew a nightmare was coming for me. So I never looked forward to the summertime.
And then you said you were raped again
By a boyfriend, an ex-boyfriend. I was breaking up with him, and that was his parting gift. And so that, like I said, that was my story. And my journey took about 10 years to come to full fruition of healing. And I just think it's very, very important.
What type of therapy? What did you go through for the healing process? What did you do?
Prayer was one. I did have a counselor, went to someone in school I spoke to, but most of my healing came through prayer, through the church.
And you didn't have a friend that you could go. Nobody that you could talk to.
No one that I felt like I could tell that story to. And so that's why I wanted to take that burden on of being someone that someone could come to speak to vent, to understand, and for them to understand that what they're feeling, the shame, the guilt, the hurt, is a normal thing, but it's something that they can combat. It's something that they can overcome, that they aren't the sum total of their past or their experience.
Because, I mean, you're just violated in so many ways, physically, mentally, and I think maybe what was worse, the physical or the mental scars that it left?
I think it's really the mental scars. The emotional part of it is so overwhelming. And so many women don't tell because of the shame, because of the guilt, the condemnation, the fear that people will point to them. They worry about their previous sexual experiences. Well, how many men have you slept with? Because unfortunately, there are still people who are thinking that way, that because you have a sexual you're active sexually, that you somehow deserved it or you asked for it. You put yourself in a position to do so, to be violated, and it's just not true. It's very, very ignorant on a lot of people's part concerning that.
So how do you meet most of the clients that you deal with? Do they come directly to you? You meet them through programs or?
Yeah, basically through programs. But a little history for me is how I started doing this work or came enlightened about the epidemic of sexual violence in this country. And then, the state is, I used to run a program at Safe and Sound called this, at UMD&J called the Safe and Sound Center. And at that time, we were the Essex County Rape Care Center. And part of the VAWA grant, the WAWA grants that was established for women, part of the women's movement and so forth, to establish centers, sexual assault centers throughout the country where women can go if they were sexually violated. So I ran that program. And when I first started that program, we had a grant. It was a new grant. I had to develop the grant. It was an RFP. And I went out into the community, and I was doing outreach work, designing material for women who were substance abuse, mentally ill, and homeless women, to just go out there and talk about sexual violence. And during my seminars or my presentations, I would get so many women at the end of those presentations that would come up to me and tell me their story. And then I held two offices. So I did that part, and then I had an office at UMD in the trauma unit, an emergency room at UMD&J. So even though when we taking on this job, being part at that time the Sexual Assault Rape Care Center of Essex County, at that time we had to do so you had to go through the training. Which is a very good thing to do. However, what I discovered during my work there, hands-on, there's nothing that can describe the agony, the pain, and the discomfort of women who come into the ER in that acute phase of the trauma. Which ends up developing to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So I did a lot of counseling with that. So some of the stories, and I just want to share maybe just two stories in the beginning that impacted my life, was a 12-year woman came in with she was 11 years old, and I remember that because my daughter was 11 at that time. And her boyfriend had sexually assaulted her daughter. She didn't know that her daughter was pregnant until the school contacted her. Wow. So I had this woman sitting in my office, and I created this really serene atmosphere, even though it was situated in the emergency room. When you came to the office, it was so serene. And I remember just looking at this young lady, 11 years old, sitting on the couch, not understanding what was going on with her body because she was pregnant. And the mother had no idea. So it's so important, as social workers, we are taught or trained to do, the engagement, the assessment, the planning, the intervention, and then determine this woman. And during the engagement and assessment is so important because that's where you develop your trust, or you develop a trust with you, and that's so important, as you know, that you're speaking to someone who you believe that they believe in you, and they understand your pain, and they want to help you get through it. So I remember she would come to me following up with her counseling sections. And I remember I wasn't there on the weekend, so one Monday she came back to me because she was following up with her appointment with me. And her daughter had been so sick over the weekend, but she wasn't coming back to me because her daughter was so sick over the weekend. She was coming back to me because of the relationship she had developed with me. Meaning that if she had not developed that relationship with me, she would have never brought her daughter back over the weekend.
Did she believe that because you said her fiance or something,
her
boyfriend did it?
Yeah, she did, because they end up
because sometimes they're in denial about
that's very true.
No, she was good. She was good about that. She, they locked him up. He was incarcerated. I don't know what happened to him, but I just remember that little girl, and my daughter was 11 years old.
Castrated. That's what should happen.
Right? So many of them, especially when you say like family members, and we hear so many celebrities tell us about their family members.
And I think does, and a lot of it does happen in the family.
It does.
It's always like an uncle or a cousin
or a brother.
Or brother. Yeah, that's happened. Yeah.
And it's hidden. And that's the thing. It becomes a big secret. No one can tell anything. And so that child learns to be quiet, learns to be silent. Not only was I, violated by a family member, but now you're telling me it's a secret. It's hush. And when you keep something quiet, it's associated with pain, it's associated with shame, it's associated with guilt. And so they carry that for almost the rest of their lives until they actually come to get some form of help.
Now it's interesting, you said you work with children. I know years ago when Nona's House had a program, and they dealt with children who were physically and sexually abused. And as a matter of fact, I think the first show that I ever did on cable was with Winona's House and with them. And one of the girls, I used to work with her when I worked for the police department. She was a forensic investigator, and she had left the police department and she was working with Winona's House. And she would tell me about, the children, how traumatized they were, but they had these dolls.
Yes.
And then they would have to go pick a doll, like what did he look like, because that's a traumatic experience for an adult, so you can imagine how it is for a child. And I think that was a very good program. I don't know whether they still do that anymore.
Yeah, they're still there.
Still
I think the program has
when
expanded.
they report,
they're still there. And I remember when at UMDNJ, I ended up starting the first women's healing group because of so many women that would come into my office for counseling, and all of the stories I would hear about women who, if someone may have, brought their daughter in to see me for counseling, then they would say, my daughter don't know, but I was a victim of sexual assault. So I would hear that so much. And I also believe in experiential therapy, meaning that I believe that it's so important that you can relate to the person.
Yes.
That because you can tell that person how you're feeling and they understand it. You can tell that person what your experience and they understand it more so that, one-on-one is good too, but it's nothing like experiencing that moment with that person, with another person. So that's why I started the women's group, and it expanded. So even after they stopped the program at UMDNJ, that's when I designed the Vesta project.
Okay.
To continue the healing group.
And I think I was telling you when I met you that I used to work in a safe house, and I was an advocate for women of domestic violence. And you saw some
Horrendous, some horrendous cases.
Yeah, and you know they have children, and you know just the abuse that goes on, and it just displaces everybody. It just really disrupts your life.
It does.
And you know, so many women are speaking out now, and people. That's another thing people don't understand. Why did you wait so long? You know, why did it take so long for you to come out? But you said it's just a silent.
And it's because
it's
you're
a silent crime that happens.
You're traumatized. It's
Right,
PTSD,
exactly.
really. So it's that part of your brain that, you know, is contained in that part of the brain that's traumatized. It creates like that flight and fight syndrome. So a lot of children, they grow up with that fight and flight syndrome.
Yes.
That becomes part of their development, which is so unfortunate because they don't, you know, they carry it into their adulthood, their relationships, how they feel about themselves.
It affects everything.
And it's so painful to see that.
So, Danene, did you try to fight back the first time it happened to you?
The first time, I think I was so terrified, absolutely terrified.
How much older was he than you?
5 years.
Okay.
5 years. And I was just absolutely terrified
you still
with
see
the
him
knife.
now?
No, absolutely not. When my grandmother and when my grandparents passed away, that was something that my mother said, no, you may not attend. You may not attend this funeral. And I haven't seen him. We don't talk about him. I have forgiven because I know that unforgiveness holds you back. And so I had to forgive him in order to free myself. So that as far as that is concerned, but no, I do not see him. I haven't seen him since I told my mother. And my
now, how were you when you told your mom?
I was turning 16.
Okay.
And did she believe you, right?
There was some question at first. I would be a lie if I said there wasn't. But as time went on and she saw my behaviors were changing,
did it affect you socially?
It affected me socially. I was more withdrawn. I was distrustful. I became promiscuous, which is one of
why is it that women become promiscuous when that happens?
It's sort of, that's how you feel like you're regaining your power, right? So like something that happened to you, you got to act it out.
So you want to try to take your power back.
Basically, yes, because girls, statistically, girls act out sexually and boys act out in violence.
Okay. So how did you two meet?
We met at a leadership, women's leadership organization. Her Life Speaks, which is a ministry for women, for empowerment, also for young women. So we minister to those women, and we actually met. It was a breakfast or a lunch.
It was a dinner.
As a dinner, yes.
Very nice.
And I was the facilitator for that meeting, and I gave briefly gave my testimony. And through my testimony, Stephanie said, I really want to talk to you because I'm starting a support group for women of sexual assault.
So Stephanie, where should women go to get help if they need help? Because a lot of times they're just afraid, they're traumatized by it. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to turn to. How can women get help?
Well,
what do you suggest?
You do have the Essex County Rape Care Center. They have a 1-800 number. And you have what's the RAIN? You know, there's a 100
RAIN.org.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that's not Purple Rain. That's something different.
No, that's RAINN.org.
That's the National Organization for Survivors of Sexual Assault. And I would also encourage them to reach out to a therapist, someone who can provide them with professional counseling. And that is so crucial, to go to professional counseling, because we have these certain developmental stages in our life beginning from childhood. And I'm a believer that whatever impacts you when you were a child becomes a part of who you are as an adult. I am such a believer of that. So I would encourage them. There's a lot of different female organizations. You can go online and find a lot of, but I would definitely encourage women to go to a professional counselor. And then a support group is so important, because that's where it becomes more experiential and more healing and more powerful and more enlightening.
And
so
you have more of a support system.
But definitely, there's so many. There are not enough. I can say there's not enough groups for women. There are not enough, and I cannot. Every time I have a conversation with a stranger, Kim, and Danene, about the kind of work that I do, or you know why I'm doing what I'm doing, I end up hearing that person respond to me, the stranger, saying it happened to me.
Yeah.
I am not making this
Wow.
up. I'm not making
I
this
believe
up.
it, yeah, because
When it's one
I
out of
believe
every
it.
3 women,
Yeah.
you're
so you're bound to run across.
Yep.
But ladies,
Yep.
I'm so glad. I am so glad that you have survived, and I'm glad that you're helping others. And I know you're doing great work, Stephanie.
Yes.
So women, if you're having any problems with that, just don't be afraid to reach out and touch to somebody. There's a lot of agencies, there's places that you can go to so you can get help. I want to thank you ladies for
you.
coming to Kim's Corner.
Thank
I'll see
you.
everybody next time. Peace.